have you back. Let's bring you this now. The situation remains quite tense in eSwatini. Pro-democracy demonstrators are currently threatening to intensify their protests. Well, it's being reported that several people have either died, been injured, or even detained. And protesters say they are concerned about the country's economy and increasing poverty. So let's discuss this matter. We're now joined by activist Mancoba Mabuza, all the way from Mbabane. Mr. Mabuza, thank you for your time and good morning to you. I mean, these protests, they didn't just mushroom out of nowhere. The people of eSwatini, even young people right now who are partaking in these protesters, seem to have long called, for reform within the kingdom, as well as for, the economy to be sustainable. It's on a decline. People are poor. Give us some context as to when exactly, these concerns had been raised.
Good morning and thank you for having us. Basically, this is not something new, as you say. The brief context is that the people of the country have always been calling for democratic change. They've been calling for the unbanning of political parties, the release of political prisoners, the return of exiles who are exiled in different countries, mainly in South Africa. But most importantly, they have been always complaining about or calling for the return of their right to elect a government of their own. Because you will remember that this all started in 1973 when political parties were banned and all powers were in the hands of the king. So quite recently, what happened is that while civil society have always been calling for these demands, there's a young student from the University of eSwatini that was killed, allegedly killed by police.
Right.
So they started something called the hashtag Justice for Mbabane. So in the midst of that, some members of parliament from inside who have been calling for a prime minister to be elected by the people, therefore emerged with this call, quite pronounced this time around. So everything started like that, and people delivered petitions in Zinkunda centers throughout the country, and until the acting prime minister stopped those petitions, therefore the violent protest erupted. That is the brief context.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the visuals as we're speaking now, we could see definitely, fires breaking out. We could see, the violence in terms of the protest. But also there were other visuals on social media of what looked like, members of the military, pulling people out of their homes, beating them up, reports of people either dying, being injured. Can you verify if indeed that is the reality on the ground right now?
Yes, and it would have been expected. I mean, the deployment of the military, the army, which started, I think, a day before yesterday, to be visible on the streets. They took strategic sites around the capital, the central bank, and other strategic streets.
Yeah.
And also they were deployed around the company premises and other places throughout the country. So yet the protest actions were continuing throughout the country. So it was always expected that the soldiers would start shooting at people, and we have got reports to that effect.
Right.
Right this morning, I've been getting calls from people throughout the country. Around the capital, Mbabane, there were gunshots in the night, and also in Manzini, which is about 40 kilometers from the capital of Mbabane as well. People have reportedly been killed or some are injured and in hospital. So, yeah, the situation is quite tense. Although I think I must say that in Mbabane, what we saw this morning, I think some major supermarkets opened up. I don't know for how long, because in the townships, the protesters seem to be taking to the streets from time and again, and then they are in confrontation with the soldiers.
I have to come in there, and please, very briefly, if you may, as you answer Mr. Mabuza, I mean, we saw a statement there being released by DIRCO. This is the South African government, obviously asking for restraint. And it's just a quote here saying the SA government calls on the security forces to exercise total restraint and protect the lives and property of the people, of course, in keeping the country's constitutional provisions and laws. Have you received any other, messages or even, letters of support from either SADC as well as the African Union in just condemning, these protests, as well as the reaction, as well as, the actions that we're seeing here from the military? And also, how do you take such, letters being sent there by, different countries and other nations?
I haven't heard of letters from SADC or AU specifically, but I think that is long overdue. What I am aware of is that civil society leaders have been in talks with some officials from SADC specifically. but it is welcomed. The calls by governments and even organizations internationally is welcome. The international community, in our view, should step in to calm the situation, but also to intervene in the political impasse in the country, because that is the main reason. What we are seeing now is just the symptom of a deep-seated crisis in terms of the government. So the international community should speedily act. We have seen it in other countries, escalating to a point where thousands of people die.
Right.
And only then the international community will step in. So at this point in time, if it can just act quickly, and we welcome the calls by government and the other international bodies for the government to engage those that are leading.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Mancoba Mabuza, for joining us.